Ahead of reaching out to Springup PR, what was the situation that you faced at the homes that prompted you to seek some help?
Yeah, so it was around sort of 9 months ago now that we were sort of in dire straits when it came to the occupancy within the care homes due to
Hmm.
a number of factors. One being that there was a lot of uncertainty in the private market with the rate of inflation and sort of economic uncertainty with a change of government, obviously being sort of on the cards looming, and a lot there. We noticed a lot of the private market had died down, and the inquiries weren't coming in as thick and fast as we were perhaps used to. We still had our 9.9, 10 out of 10 review scores on the key platforms like Care Home UK and our multitude of Google reviews in place. However, still this wasn't generating the inquiries in which we needed to fill up the remaining occupancy within our bedrooms.
Hmm.
Um, so that led us to, in terms of the private market, but also on the social market at the same time, there was a lot going on there, especially with our local councils within the Hampshire area. So they were moving on to a framework, which meant that they had slowed their placements down within the Hampshire County Council. At the same time, they were on the verge of bankruptcy themselves as a local council. So this caused a lot of bed blocking within the NHS and a lot of reluctance to place people within the care home sector for elderly residential dementia, which is what we do. Um, and at the time, then obviously this had a greater effect on on the reduction in our occupancy. So we'd been used to experiencing high levels of occupancy around 96 to 99% across the group, which is fantastic for the industry. However, during this time, some of our units had dropped down to around 85% occupancy, which meant that we were seeing a loss in potential turnover of around £80,000 a month just across a couple of our care settings, which, as most people know in the care sector, the last 15% of your occupancy makes up a large amount of your EBITDA margin.
Do. I mean, Steve, who's our father, has been in the industry over 25 years, and word of mouth, and the most you kind of ever really did was put a brochure out. And myself personally, I'd done a couple of leaflets for the care home, but without really much success. So knowing you were sort of sat in the inbox, we decided to give a telephone chat call, and the plan that you put through to us was very thorough, in depth, detailed, and kind of exactly what you were looking for. And there's a bit of back and forth over what care homes we used in the group, what ones we wanted to promote and why. And you guys were very accommodating to our needs and what we needed, and set up kind of like a 6 month trial period, which we've just come to the end of. And I know Liam himself was so impressed that as of Thursday last week at our last managers meeting, we had a big discussion with everyone, and Liam was presenting the fact that he believed that continuing with Spring Up was very beneficial to the group in its entirety. So, yeah, here we
That's
are.
great. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you. And Liam, you were mentioning previously about the last 15% occupancy has a significant weight towards net profits. Can you just maybe explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So within the care industry, there's a lot of costs that are fixed regardless on how many of your rooms are vacant. I mean, when it comes to domestic, we still need to clean the entirety of the home, whether the rooms are vacant or occupied. However, obviously, if they're occupied, it requires a little bit more. Cooking, so the kitchen costs remain the same.
Mm,
Our mortgage costs, utilities, etc. There's not a big disparity in the total overheads on the
mm,
care home, whether there is 60% occupancy or 100% occupancy. The main variation that we do see in the direct overheads is the increase in caring cost. As a group, we always maintain 15% agency. And the reason for this is because if there's a sudden outbreak within the care home and we have a sudden loss of occupancy, which it's the nature of the industry, and the nature of, I mean, human care in general, that it allows us to reduce our staffing cost on the care side proportional to our level of occupancy at the time. So we were able to cut back the caring cost, which I know not all care homes would even be able to do that. Because if you operate on 100% employed staffing, then of course we have to provide the contracted hours as per our legal agreement with the staff when they decide to join with us. So we're able to cut back a little bit on the caring cost. However, it's one single cost, the caring cost. It's not a huge amount, as I know a lot of local authorities love to ignore the fact that care homes have any other cost other than the care staff when it comes to asking what our fee rates include. There's a magnitude of costs within the industry, even aside from staffing. If we look at waste removal, CQC, different licenses, subscriptions, maintenance, etc., the list is endless. These costs are fixed, and as such, when we fill up our last 15% of bedrooms, let's say based on a 50-bed care home, so we've got our remaining rooms there of sort of 7, 8 rooms that become available. That would normally only mean about an increase of one staff member to the building, which one shift it roughly equates to about £5,300 per calendar month in total overhead cost. And then if we're charging out we're more towards like the higher end of the market, we deal with more complex needs. We provide good facilities and services. We're looking at sort of £1,500 per week per resident, with only an increase in around £5,300 to the total staffing. There's some other slight costs that we can reduce and increase when it comes to the occupancy. But again, as I said before, not massively. This means that our margin on those remaining bedrooms is much greater than on the original bedrooms, because it might be around sort of 75% occupancy is where our break-even point is. And then from there, our next sort of 10% has a certain margin. And then if we can occupy to maximum capacity, which as a company, we look at this and call this potential turnover for each month. If we have every room full, what's our potential turnover? What are we missing each month? That almost directly correlates to our net margin, really. Especially on the last sort of 5 to 8% of bedrooms, there really isn't any increase in cost whatsoever. So these ones is pretty much what is gross becomes net.
I see. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And as Lauren was mentioning, I think you approached us after emails have been coming your way. But tell me about kind of your process of looking for help and how you thought about this. And I presume you went to a number of people to ask for help. Or tell
Yeah,
us a little bit more about
to
that, how
be
that worked.
fair, we'd had a couple of emails and stuff, but Springup really was the primary and first company that we approached. And I think really we were just very impressed with what you guys had to say, what you guys put together for us, and the service that you were looking to provide. You very much understood what our requirements were. So we pretty quickly decided that we'd give you guys a try. Yeah, so that really was the process. It was a shorter than average process, but we were kind of at the point where we'd tried everything else. And we'd heard good things about you guys. I'd done a little research, and we'd got approached by quite a few overseas-based companies as well. And we were like, we really need people to understand the UK market because it is very different everywhere. And yeah, and yourself, you really did. And then you obviously introduced us to Victoria, who's been like dealing with us sort of more on a weekly basis, and we've been working very closely with her. And she's actually even very familiar with the area with Hampshire, where our care homes are based. So she has even more knowledge and understanding of the specific area, and that means she has an understanding of our challenges, which are kind of primarily rooted in the New Hampshire framework. So having that knowledge and understanding has kind of been invaluable with the weekly chats and checkups with us.
That's great, thank you. And so yes, we helped together a success plan with you, and to tell me about how that's unfolded and how it's gone for you.
Yeah, so as far as our KPIs are concerned, especially, it's been absolutely fantastic. So as I mentioned, we sort of came to you in difficult times, where as a collective of across just 3 care homes, we were having a potential loss of turnover of around £1 million per annum, which for 3 homes is huge, and especially where I say that directly affects our bottom line. We target around £240,000 per annum across the 3 care homes as a potential loss. Because obviously we'll never be able to achieve 100%. It's not realistic to say that the bedrooms are going to be 100% occupied every single day of the year. However, this means that we had £750,000 roughly of total loss due to our occupancies. As such, we've increased our occupancy levels since being with Springup. One of our care settings is now averaging 99% occupancy with the marketing. The other care home is now averaging at around 95% occupancy, and as such, we're well on track. We've put about £500,000 back into our annual turnover since joining with yourselves. We've now had a change in strategy due to, again, the current state of the market with the local authorities and a lot of uncertainty looming with added pressures that they're putting on the NHS and the complete failure to be, for lack of a better term, of their current framework in which they've implemented within our area. It's not viable for the care industry. The rates in which they offer do not allow us to provide a safe level of care with a margin in which we need to show to meet our banking covenants. And then, as such, they're now putting a huge strain on the NHS, with around a quarter of the beds in our local hospitals are currently being bed blocked by elderly waiting to go into care. So we're predicting that in the next 12 months, this whole new framework system is going to be collapsed. As such, we've had a change of strategy of Springup, where we're now looking to privatise our business. Our occupancy, as say, has been fantastic, which was our original strategy, and we achieved this within the first couple months under the help of Springup. And we've now been maintaining that strong occupancy for the last 4 to 5 months with yourselves, which has been brilliant. But say we're now looking at privatising as we're looking to the future of what's going to happen in the next 12 months within the industry, as well as looking at our fee rates and where our margins need to be for our banking covenants, which we've now been working on increasing the private side, and we've already increased our privatisation by around 6% at one of the care homes and 5% at the other care home, with monthly targeted increases on privatising the remainder of those 2 care settings over the next 7 months with yourselves.
That's great. Thank you so much. Finally, would you recommend Springup PR to other care home providers?
Highly recommend. As say, when we came to you guys, we had a huge loss in the turnover and a massive loss in our EBITDA margin within the business. For the amount in which it costs per calendar month, it's negligible to what we've been able to achieve. As with most businesses, everything works on need and demand and supply. For us, we had the issue of we had too much supply for a massively reduced level of demand when we first came to you. Now, when we have beds become available within our care settings, we usually have around 3 people waiting for one of those beds, which obviously puts the power much more back in our court in terms of how to meet the needs, the costs in which we need to charge, so that we don't have to take reductions which fundamentally we can't afford to take. However, as I said to you before, those last parts of occupancy are pure margin. So if we had to take them previously, we sucked it up as an initial loss, to then sort of work out as the next strategy in the future. But I'd highly recommend, because as say that the cost is negligible comparable to what we've been able to put back in the pot, and it's helped us now move our business strategy to a much more viable option that's going to be future proof for the next decade within the care industry, especially with the uncertainty within the market.
But from my perspective, dealing with yourself and primarily dealing with Victoria has been an absolute pleasure. We are, as we like to say, in the business of people, and we feel like Springup is as well, and that you guys really care about our business and even our residents as well by proxy. So that's really important to us, especially as a small family business, that we feel that whoever we're working with has the same values as us.
No, completely. As say, obviously, as say, I'm on the numbers side, being financial director for the company. However, we always say that we have to look after the numbers to look after our residents, because without looking after the numbers, the margins that we need to show, it puts us in potential risk of breaching our banking covenants, which means we're not doing our job in being able to provide a good quality of care and a stable home environment for the residents. Because we breach the banking covenant, then they have all right to remove the lending facilities, which we have cross guarantees across our entire care group. So if one setting fails, the whole group can fail in effect, which means these 134 residents that we currently have residing in our care homes now are being put straight back out into the market, which, as I previously mentioned to you, is currently in dire straits, where placements aren't really seeming a priority to our local authorities. As say, their budget is what's the top of their priority, not the health and welfare of the residents, not their best interest, purely staying on budget, which means 134 people go back into the system in effect, where we deal with challenging behaviours. There's not that many care homes that can meet the needs of the residents we look after. So if we don't look after our finances, then we're not looking after our residents. So working with you guys has been fantastic for us to be able to do our job in how we can make sure that we are future proofed, so that the residents' home remains stable and viable for the future of where the care industry is heading.